Welcome to the video series of ASP.NET Authentication Authorization. In this whole video series, what we'll do is that we'll first touch base on four important concepts, that is authentication, authorization, principal, and identity objects. Once we're done with that, we will move ahead and we'll talk about the three important modes of authenticating. That is, one is by using the Windows, which is nothing but your Active Directory services. The other one is forms, where you basically want to use your own custom screen to do validation and verification. And finally, there's a passport authentication. We'll then touch base on three important options of security itself, that is basic, digest, and integrated. We'll also look into forms authentication and how we can achieve single sign-on by using forms authentication. Finally, we'll look into ASP.NET membership and roles provider and how they help us basically to increase productivity when we try to build authentication and authorization using ASP.NET. So what we'll do is, first is basically we'll first try to understand the four important vocabularies, because these vocabularies I'm going to repeat again and again throughout the video. So what is authentication, authorization, principal, and identity objects? So what we'll do in this video series is that we'll first understand these four important concepts, and we'll look into a simple sample code of how to use the principal and identity objects to basically understand who is the logged in user currently into your ASP.NET application. Authentication means identifying the user. So in other words, like let's say if a user Shiv, basically sends his user ID and password to a system. So the first process would be to identify, if the user is valid user from the database. The second thing is to identify, what kind of rights does this user Shiv has. So that is authorization. So authentication means basically who the user is, to identify the user. Once you've identified the user, authorization means basically to understand that this user has what kind of rights. In other words, does he have rights to access the admin pages, or does he have rights to access only the simple pages or simple resources of the project? Now the second important concept which is in conjunction with authentication and authorization is the principal and identity object. Principal and identity are nothing but they are basically objects. They are objects, or they are classes you can think about which belong to the system.security namespace. Now both of these objects basically help you to detect at any given moment of time in your application who the user is logged in and what kind of role the user has. So in case if you want to just detect who the user is logged in, you can use the identity object. In case you want to know the roles associated with the user, then you can use the principal object. So you can think about the principal and identity objects are basically objects which help you to identify what the user who has logged into your application and what kind of role the user is playing. Now what we'll do is that we'll do a sample project to understand that how these principal and identity objects can help you to detect the usernames as well as the roles they play in your application. So here's a sample code. So what I've done is I've just created a project with only one page, that is default.aspx, and in the page load event or default.aspx, what I'm doing is I'm using the user object, and inside the user object I'm displaying the name of the logged in user by using the identity object. I'm displaying the authentication type of the user. I'm displaying if the user has been authenticated or is it just anonymous user. And also I'm just checking in case if the user is administrator, I would like to know if it is true or false. So basically you can see that at any given moment of time, if you want to just ensure who is the user logged in and what kind of role it is, you can just use the identity object and you can know the logged in user. Now what I'll do is I'll go and build this application, and I'll just publish this website on the IIS website. So I've published it. So here's a simple directory I've created called as my website, and over there you can see the default.aspx page. So let's go and browse this. So there is a page which is up and running. Now you can notice over here that basically no username is displayed, no authentication type is displayed, and also it is saying that this is not an authenticated user, and definitely because all of the above are false, then definitely he is not even the administrator. So you can see that no information has been displayed over here. That's for the fact because if you go to the my website, if you go to the properties, at this moment in the directory security tab I have enabled the anonymous access, and because the access is anonymous at this moment, that's why it is not displaying any kind of authentication type or authorization type. So what we'll do is I will just go and change this anonymous access, and we will say that this access is a Windows authentication. It's an integrated Windows access. So which means that the user will be picked up from your computer management, uh, from your Windows ADS directory. So what I've done is basically now I have said that the anonymous access is disabled, and it should picked up from it should be picked up from the integrated security. So I've created a simple user here called a Shiv, and I have basically at this moment, if you go to the properties of Shiv, he is not administrator, right? So now let's go and refresh this page. Definitely if you reload this page, it will ask for the username and password. So let's go and give the username and password, and you can see that basically now it's giving us proper information. You can see that it's saying that the logged in user is Shiv, and he's basically using the integrated security mode. He is authenticated, but he is not the administrator, and that's right, because when we created the user, the user is not of member administrator. Now if you go and you make him administrator, so it was a long name, so find help me out. Now let's go and refresh the page. Then we should see, now we should be able to see basically that the administrator is true. Let me just go and take this page again. Shiv. So we should now be able to see that the administrator is true. So in this way we are able to detect basically who is a logged in user, and what kind of authentication type he has, what kind of roles is he playing. So the principal and the identity object will help you to identify at any given moment of time who is a logged in user and what kind of role is he playing. So I hope that this session was useful. In the coming up sessions, we'll look into the three important part of or the three ways of doing authentication authorization in ASP.NET, that is Windows, Forms, and Passport. So we'll first start with Windows. We'll look into how to practically do the Windows authentication, and then we'll move towards Forms and Passport authentication.